Hi everybody. I have not done this in a long time, so forgive me. I'm not a professional, but I figured I would just do this with a video because I had somebody ask me a question and I anticipate answering it again. So I'm going to go ahead and put this out there. I am going to talk about grammar curriculum from elementary school through middle school. So I just graduated my third homeschooled kid out of four. And we have had very different experiences. We've used a lot of different curriculum because of the needs of our kids. So my oldest child is on the autism spectrum, but very good verbally, but had difficulty with writing a little bit, especially handwriting. Second child, no problems at all, but didn't like to capitalize anything. Punctuation was a struggle for him. Third child was pretty average of a student, a little bit above average, fairly average, was a little bit late to read, but is a really good writer. And then our last child has dyslexia, very bright, but has dyslexia. So we have had to kind of try out lots of things. And I'm going to go over some of the more common curriculums that you're going to run into. They are all things that I have used in some capacity. And I will tell you which one that we settled on and why at the end. One of them I have not used. I've researched it, but I didn't use it. So the first couple things that you need to think about when you're picking a grammar curriculum is it going to just focus on parts of speech and grammar, or is it going to be something that also encompasses writing and reading and spelling? Because those are really all, when you're thinking about grammar or reading kind of globally, especially through middle school, it needs to have all of those little parts to it. And there's a lot of different ways to break those things up. You don't have to buy a grammar curriculum that encompasses all of the things. You can do your reading, for instance, with your history. You can do your writing with science research. You can do your spelling completely as a standalone, and you can do your parts of speech in different ways. You can do them with workbooks and worksheets. There's actually one that I know of, hands-on curriculum for parts of speech. So that's what you need to think about. So I'm going to go over those things, why you may or may not use them, pros and cons. So the first one I'm going to start with is Abeka. So y'all, I'm not good at this computer camera thing so much anymore. And I had to actually write those backwards by hand, so that's not my actual handwriting. But it is what it is. So Abeka, I would say on this list of Abeka is the thing that's going to be most like what you would receive in a public school. You're going to have reading curriculum, grammar curriculum, workbooks. It's very worksheet heavy. It's a very comprehensive grammar curriculum. I think that kids that use Abeka come out of it with an extremely impressive set of skills when they are finished with it. Personally, I feel like Abeka, not all of those skills are needed through the 12th grade. I think that you can graduate from punctuation and spelling way before then, and then just kind of concentrate on writing and analyzing literature. That's my opinion. That's one reason why we didn't use it. The other reason that we didn't use it was because I have kids that have different needs, and so the tediousness of doing all of the book work every single day for a kid that either has a difficult time sitting that long or a kid that doesn't really need it is difficult. It just was not a good fit for us. The cost is a factor in Abeka. Now, one nice thing about Abeka is it's like the initial original homeschool curriculum of all time. So you can find Abeka used everywhere, which is awesome. But it's just not something that I readily choose for our family. I have a lot of other options that I would prefer. In that same vein is Rod and Staff. So this is Abeka done by the Amish. It's like a Mennonite curriculum. It's very much like Abeka. It is cheaper than Abeka. It also has textbooks and has workbooks. It's very pupil heavy, not so much the teacher has to do, except for grading, which is great if you have a kid like that. If you have a kid who really likes grammar, this is great. If you don't have that kid, Rod and Staff can be kind of boring. The other thing is, it is heavily influenced by Mennonite culture. As you go along in Mennonite curriculum, I have found Mennonites are pacifists, and if you're not a pacifist, then you're going to encounter curriculum that challenges that. So while you will not find curriculum that teaches you to accept Jesus as your personal savior, which you could find in a Becca. You're not going to find it in Rod and Staff, but you are going to find pacifism taught, and you're going to find stories about their heroes in the Mennonite faith. So that is something that you need to think about. You're going to find that in a lot of the Mennonite curriculums. But Rod and Staff is a solid curriculum. If it's reasonably expensive, you can find that used also. But you're going to spend a lot of time on grammar. And if that's something that you want to do, then that's great. If it's something you want to do to get a good foundation for a couple years, and you have a kid that can handle it, you have a kid that has the reading ability and the aptitude to handle it. If your child does not have the reading ability and aptitude to handle that level of coursework, you are going to end up with a lot of tears and a lot of frustration and a lot of fights. So a lot of reading and grammar and math, but we're not talking about that today, I found in my personal homeschooling experience was very dependent upon the character of the child and their ability. If you have a kid that's a little more resilient, then this is okay. If you have a kid that's not so resilient, you're all going to be crying. Okay, so keep that in mind with Rod and Staff. Christian Light education is kind of a softer version. I really, really love Christian Light education for the early grades. I'm talking like kindergarten, first, second, third grade. I think it is wonderful. It has just the right amount of teacher involvement so that your children are not kind of doing a lot of things on their own yet, so that you're right there to correct, and yet the workload is, it's like perfect. I love Christian Light education for early grades. I feel like it's super comprehensive. It does a great job at teaching phonics. It's like workbook and flashcards. The little stories are good, very wholesome stories, lots of agriculture. You're going to have that in the Mennonite, which is fine until you're tired of it. You know, it's fine until like you want to learn about something else. And especially I find if you've got boys I think kind of get bored. But it's economical. I really enjoyed Christian Light education, not for the long haul, but for this time frame, I would say I would highly endorse Christian Light education. Let's see, there was one other one I was thinking of that kind of fits in this category. If I remember it, I'll come back to it. We did a video-based grammar one time. I cannot recall the name of it. We did it for our third child who was reading but struggling with the grammar aspect of it, and she's a hands-on kind of a learner, likes to doodle and draw and cut out paper, and this was a curriculum that you watch the video and you are kind of creating your own textbook as you go. I loved it. I thought it was very good, but I honestly feel like there can be too much of that cutting and pasting and drawing. Some level of boredom is good for kids. Sometimes you just have to do the work, and it doesn't have to be exciting for you. And that's part of the process with homeschool, is that you're developing character. Like, yeah, this might not be what you really want to do, but it's what you have to do. This child got a little bit lost in all the artsy part, and I had to do some reinforcing. But I think for the right kid, it could be a really good fit if you've got a kinesthetic learner. Okay. I'm going to skip these two here and go down to this one, Winston Grammar. Winston Grammar is a hands-on grammar curriculum. So, and I have almost all of these curriculums somewhere in boxes, but since we moved here a year and a half ago and I don't have little kids anymore, I couldn't begin to tell you where they are in my house. But the Winston Grammar curriculum is mainly to teach parts of speech. So it does very good job at teaching nouns and verbs and sentences. So all of the things I've given you up to this point teach diagramming. They teach sentence diagramming. Winston Grammar does not use diagramming as a means to teach parts of speech. They use their own set of like symbols for the sentence, and you take it very, very slow. You go over grammar, or you go over articles. That's the first thing you do. A, N, and then are the articles. You go through a checklist of sentences and you put a little check mark over every article. Then they teach you that the article is a flag for a noun. Then they go over proper nouns, common nouns. then they go over verbs, then they go over adjectives and adverbs and direct objects, indirect objects, prepositions. They go through all of those things. But it is not a writing curriculum. It is not a reading curriculum. It is simply grammar curriculum. It's really good if you have somebody who needs to do something to learn. It can feel like a game if you have kind of a reluctant student. It's not terribly expensive. However, you will need spelling curriculum. You're going to need literature curriculum, and you're going to need some type of writing. Whether you choose to use a curriculum for that or not is up to you, but you're going to need some kind of writing. So those are kind of the pros and cons of Winston Grammar. I'm going to go over, there's another one I didn't write down here called Daily Grams. And Daily Grams is kind of like Winston Grammar, where it's this promise of like, you're only going to do like 5 minutes of work a day in this workbook. And we're going to start with prepositions. They start with prepositions because the idea is that nothing of really great value is inside of a prepositional phrase. So if you just eliminate all the prepositional phrases, you're left with kind of the bare bones sentence, and then they work off of that. So Daily Grams are okay, but again, I found that it really wasn't enough of an experience with instruction to really get that grammar in. Maybe some kids, but I did not find that to be our experience. We tried it, and either it was way too easy or it wasn't too easy, but it just didn't really stick. I really feel like after homeschooling, I have figured out that every time that my kids have had an experience with learning, those are the things that they know now as an adult. So, and experiences can be, you failed and we're going to correct this until you get it right. Or experiences can be where we did something together, or I just taught at the marker board and went over stuff. Those have been our best things that we've learned in homeschool. Okay, these two are the most expensive. And because they're backwards to me, but not to you, and they're all the same letters, I'll try not to get them confused. So this is IEW, Institute for Excellence in Writing. This is the Andrew Padua man, however you pronounce his last name. And he is a lovely, wonderful person, and his videos are very entertaining. He's a sweet personality. And one thing that IEW will do is it will definitely teach you parts of speech, and you will definitely be writing. It starts with note-taking, and that's kind of an interesting skill to develop. I would encourage you to have your kids, I'd say, 3rd, 4th grade, start to take notes from you talking to them about what's in their books in any subject of your choice. It surprised me. I started teaching at a homeschool co-op a couple of years ago when we were in Michigan, and it really surprised me like how many kids in high school have never had an opportunity to take notes when they're homeschooled. So it doesn't mean that they're not smart or that they're not capable. They just haven't had the experience, and so they tend to, make a lot of mistakes. Like they write down things that they don't really need to have, or they don't write down the right information, or they don't write down enough information. So I would encourage you, my boys are both really good note takers. They got more of my lecturing than my other 2 children did, and it shows because they're better note takers. So IEW starts with note taking off of a document. And some people use those skills. It's where you find basically the subject and the verb of every sentence, and it begins there, and then they have you retell the story in your own words. And then they have you dress up the things that you write. So it is a lovely, wonderful, thoughtful, exquisite curriculum. They have you add all of these adjectives and adverbs to everything. And while initially writing, that's wonderful, it's good for kids that don't know what to write. He provides lists of adverbs and adjectives to actually choose from and use. He's teaching writing as a pattern, not as an expression of the heart, which most good writers are organized writers. You have to organize your writing to be a good writer. But what makes people actually want to read your writing is when you write from the heart. I don't know that this accomplishes that goal. The other thing is that when you advance, like in high school or college, if you were going to write, they're going to come in and take out as many words as possible. It's not, good writing is not flowery, excessive writing. Good writing is concise. It's using one word that perfectly describes something instead of using 10 words and 3 sentences. So it kind of is the antithesis of college writing. And if you do have a child who's going to go to college, I think that that's a consideration to make. So I think IEW is a great thing to use in the beginning. And they have several offshoots of their curriculum that can help you with punctuation, capitalization, punctuation, spelling, all of those things. They have some offshoots. It's been a while since I've used it. But again, how much time and money do you want to dedicate to writing and grammar? Like, do you want to dedicate that much of it? Part of what I love about homeschooling is the double dipping of jobs. So if I want you to read, I want you to read a book that I think is going to impact your life. I don't want you to read whatever comes in your reader today that doesn't really impact you. If I'm going to have you go through the trouble of writing, I want you to write about an experience you've had. I want you to give me a persuasive essay on what you would do if you were talking to a friend that was having sexual identity issues, or I want you to write, something about a topic that you might choose as a career. The beauty in homeschooling is that you can customize it to your children and still accomplish the result. And the more customizing you do to that kid, the more buy-in that they are going to have, the more they're going to remember the experience, the greater likelihood that they're going to use it long term. All right. So that's Institute for Excellence in Writing. This is Excellence in Writing, I think, or Essentials in Writing. This is by a woman. I don't remember her name. But it's sort of an IEW experience also. It's not the same curriculum. I don't remember that much about it. I did research it, and like I said, I was coming out of this one, looking at this one, and I realized it was kind of a lot more the same, not set up the same, but the same commitment, and I was not looking to be boxed in by that level of commitment myself. I already covered Winston Grammar, so I'm going to tell you about the one that we actually settled on that I feel like really, really, really checked most of the boxes. What you're going to find when you homeschool for any length of time is that you're never going to be happy with anything. You're going to buy the curriculum, and if you really put any thought at all into what you're doing with your kids, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't like that. Resist the temptation to bail excuse me, out of that curriculum and buy new stuff, because I'm here to tell you that you will not be perfectly happy with anything that you buy. And that's okay, because you have to remember the curriculum is a tool for teaching. It is not the instructor. You are the instructor. You're the teacher. Pray about it. Ask God what he thinks about it. Figure out what your kid needs. Take an honest look at your child and figure out what it is they need. Do you really need to switch curriculum, or are they just whining? Do they just need to gut through it? Or are they really not learning? Those are two different things. Lots of curriculum is marketed so that people don't have to work so hard at home, if you know what I'm saying. Like ease. I'll throw another one in here too that I didn't cover, was Master Books. Master Books is okay. It's kind of like Dailygrams. It's like if you have a kid that's really panicking about reading or writing, then they can do this little bit of grammar and it'll be okay and they'll learn. Things like Dailygrams, Master Books, trying to think of, not really the other ones up here, I wouldn't say, but things like those, they're kind of based on the Charlotte Mason method that, you only need to push a child as long as they can absorb it. And then after that, it's kind of worthless to keep pushing. And I think there's truth to that. I think there's a lot of theory to that. I don't think there's always truth to it, I'll be honest with you. The scripture says that in all labor there is profit. And while it is possible, absolutely possible, to push children too far, in curriculum, do not be afraid to push them toward excellence. And excellence might mean you have to do this longer than you feel comfortable, and that's okay. That's how we learn as adults to do things longer than we feel comfortable. You practice that as a kid, and doing 30 minutes of an activity that you don't like every day is a pretty low risk way to build resilience. There are a lot of things that could be worse. So I don't remember how I found this curriculum. Almost nobody has ever heard of it. But I will preface this by saying this. My two boys took the SAT and the ACT. One took the ACT, the other two took the SAT. My daughter didn't take any. Math is a very real struggle for her, as is test taking. She did get through college algebra as a high school senior and got a B in her college algebra class, so we did make it. That's a very different thing than sitting in front of a standardized test that doesn't really have a whole lot of bearing or purpose. So she has never taken those tests. She could take them if she wanted to, but there hasn't been a need for her to do so, so we didn't do that with her. But my two boys did, and I will tell you, there are three things that I think really, really helped them on their grammar, English portion of those tests, because they both did very well. My child with autism scored above the 90th percentile, and my other child scored in the 99th percentile on both of those tests. And so they did very, very well. And one of those things is we made them read the King James Version of the Bible a lot. King James Version is like reading Shakespeare. It's like a freshman level of college reading. They started reading that when they could read. Was it hard? Yes. Was it difficult? Yes. Did they understand everything? No. Did it pay off? Absolutely. Not just spiritually, but it paid off in their comprehension and their ability to read. The other thing is, when they got to be a certain age, like 7th, 8th grade, I started having them read classical literature because it's hard. It's just hard. And again, low risk activity to build resilience. So that was very good for them that they had to read. And the third one is this little thing that I found. This is called Climbing to Good English, which I find ironic since it's an English curriculum, and I think the title is kind of awkward. Climbing to Good English. And they have this from 1st grade through the 8th grade. Now, this is an interesting curriculum. This is an Amish curriculum. It is not even a Mennonite curriculum. This is an Amish-based curriculum. And the thing that you need to understand about the Amish is that they go to school through the 8th grade. But this is 12 years of grammar in 8 grades. And it is not exciting. There are no pictures in here. This book was about $7.50. There is a teacher's guide that looks just like it. There are enough lessons, 1 per day. It covers sentence diagramming. It covers writing. There's writing assignments in here. They have separate add-on curriculum that you can buy for reading and writing. This is a vocabulary workbook where it's just your standard kind of vocabulary, but the words are a little more difficult because it's an Amish curriculum. They're a little more old-fashioned-y words, which I'm okay with. In this whole world of like bruhs and whatever, these children are speaking like a language that I don't even understand anymore. It's kind of nice to have actual words. And then this is the workbook for the reading. So this is the workbook. Here is the little reading book. So between these things, reading, vocabulary and spelling, and the grammar book, which includes writing, you have an entire year of curriculum. And I want to say that all of that together might have been $35, $40. Like, it's pretty reasonable. Okay, so let's go back to why do I like the Climbing to Good English so well? I like it because it offers a pretty comprehensive description at the front of each lesson that's also not too long. It offers lots of lists of the parts of speech, and there's a lot here. For example, this is lesson 56. okay? Recognizing pronouns. It's going to go through what a pronoun is at the beginning, give some examples, have you write the pronoun and its antecedent. Then it's going to go into personal pronouns, give you the little chart, and then you identify those, and some more practice. There's lots of practice. So there's like 14 exercises here. What I did with my children, so they didn't lose their mind when they saw all that work, was I said, do the odds. That's all I want you to do is the odds. I would check it. If they got it, they were done with it. If they didn't get it, we went back together and would practice on the evens together. Okay, so that's kind of how I treated the curriculum. We did not fill in every single blank in the book. We did not do 90% of the writing exercises. And I will tell you why I did not do the writing exercises. I use a little format for my kids' writing from the time they are very, very little until they are pretty old, like 7th grade or so. I use the same format. It's a thing that, pardon me, that they did probably in the late 80s when I was in middle school, and they called it power writing is what it was called. And it's very simple. It is a bunch of circles. You have your main idea is here, and then you have 3 offshooting ideas, and you put your ideas in there, and then off of those, you can develop that into 3 more sentences each. So we start with this diagram. We diagram what we're going to write in a visual diagram first, and then all of those go down to a concluding statement. I have them work on the diagram, and then I have them write it out, and that's it. And as they get older, there's more circles added to it, and that's what we do. And I have them write about all kinds of things that they would want to write about. That's all that we really do to that point. When they get to research writing, my boys, because of doing this, pretty intuitively knew how to write research papers. But I did use, I began to use last year with my last child, something from Christian Light Education. They have a little workbook that accompanies a research paper, and it's like research writing 1, and then there's a second workbook, research writing 2. You don't have to buy anything but that little workbook, and it's cheap. But it just kind of goes through the process of writing a research paper the old school way, where like you go and get your sources from the library or from the internet, and then you write note cards, and then you organize your note cards on a table, and then you begin to form an outline and sentences and all of that. And so that just kind of keeps mom on track also, because sometimes those things can get away from me. So this is really long, I'm sorry, but that's what we did for writing. Spelling, the spelling curriculum I really like is called Spelling Workout. The reason I like those is because of all the things you can give your kids to do and then kind of walk away from it. Spelling Workout is great. It teaches spelling phonetically, so it's not just a random bunch of words. This curriculum that I use, this one here, is random bunches of words. Once your kids learn phonics, I think it's a good idea to do random bunches of words. But we didn't spell anything at all in high school. Most public schools don't do spelling in high school. So by the time we were done in the 8th grade with this book, we were done with spelling and grammar. All we focused on was writing and literature. Writing and reading and analyzing your literature. For literature, if you don't want to use a reading curriculum, one of the things I would suggest is using, let me see, I've got one over here. Let me step away for a second. I'll show you what I have over here. Here is one of the research paper 2 booklets. Okay, here is the teacher's manual to Winston Grammar. It kind of shows you, this is the one with the little cards, and you use the little cards, and it's kind of like a game a little bit for learning grammar. But what I usually did for literature was I would use things like this. This is Novelties. This is one of the places. When they're younger, there is another company, and if I could remember the name of it, I would tell you, you can buy them from Christian book distributors or Rainbow Resource, and they have, like, the story of Black Beauty is written in a simplistic format, and so the kid reads a little story and then follows the questions every day. And then before the next chapter, they do this work before the chapter to help them understand what's coming up, the vocabulary for it, and they work on that. Then they read it, then they answer more questions. And my kids really enjoyed those. They liked those, and I liked them too because they were like just enough. These are good, like this one, and there's a video on my YouTube channel from 10,000 years ago when my hair was darker, where I reviewed Animal Farm as a book. And every kid should read Animal Farm at some point, but Animal Farm gives you an opportunity to talk about socialism with your children. But I used this booklet with that for the kids. So it's, you know, you get the book at the thrift store or the library, and you buy this book, which gives you all of the information that they're going to need to kind of guide them through reading the book, that encompasses the vocabulary and writing and all of that sort of stuff. So that is my big talk on middle school grammar. So if you have any questions for me, comment below and I'll try to check this and answer them. All right, have a good day.